Hello everyone, my name is Trevorius, and I'm here with the second video in the What in the World Should I Be Doing series. Today I'll be talking about supports. The support role has always been seen as the least desirable role, even more so than tanks. How many times have you had games where everyone in your game is begging everybody else to swap to a healer, and no one is willing to do so? This, I think, comes from a misinterpretation of what the support role is in Overwatch and how to properly execute it. A lot of people came into this game from other games like CSGO or League of Legends, and looking at supports from a lens of either of those games can cause it to look less than desirable. CSGO players are all about shooting, and therefore may see the support role as a waste of all the practice they have put into aim. They may even think that supports don't need to be shooting, and avoid the role altogether because of that. For League of Legends players, they come from a game in which the support player was the low man on the totem pole. You always had to spend your gold on crappy items just to help your team out, and you were always getting killed because your crappy items meant you couldn't fight anybody. And your role was fairly repetitive. You stayed bot lane, assisted your ADC, put out wards, and then eventually watched as your entire team got ripped to shreds late game and there was nothing you could do. But in Overwatch, it's different. Support heroes have a huge impact on the game that players don't recognize because the impact doesn't come from hitting shots. As a general rule, a support's job is to make their allies seem better than they really are. To expand on that, no matter how dumb your allies may be, you have the ability to make their dumb plays seem better than they really are by using your abilities to augment your allies. Ana can throw a bionic grenade into a charging Reinhardt and pocket him as he's in the middle of 6 enemies, and when he lives, he may think he made a really good play, but you know that it was all you. Lucio can hit his speed boost at a choke and charge in closely behind his team, and then he can boop away a key hero and make it very hard for them to help their team. Your team may think that they just nailed the engagement, but you know that it was really a 6v5 because of you. And Mercy can just wait until her team dies and then go in and res them. It wasn't a terrible fight, it was a perfectly coordinated res that was all planned. But in order to do these things, supports need to stay alive. Supports have to play the safest out of the 3 classes because you're the last line of defense. If someone makes a crappy decision and is mispositioned, you can save them, but if you make a crappy decision, there's probably no one to save you. Play behind your team, but not absurdly far behind them. If you play too far back, you risk getting dove on without anybody backing you up. A good general rule of thumb is to stay about 1 to 2 payload lengths away from your team. Any further and you're at a risk of getting picked off. Any closer and you're going to end up in the middle of the fight. The most common mistake I see from supports is mispositioning. It is very possible to stay safe and still be close to the team. You can use natural terrain, position directly under high ground to avoid getting picked from it, and position around corners to avoid enemies. What you don't want to do is go off on your own to a perceived safe position where you either get picked or can't do anything useful because you're too far away from your team. Remember, supports are there to make their team better. You can't make your team better if you're not with them, but you also can't make them better if you're dead. As you play the role, you will find that delicate balance between being with the team and staying safe. You also need to realize that as a support, you have to consider it your fault if a fight is lost. Obviously, it's not all your fault, but this is much better than what most people do when playing support, which is go on autopilot. They just absent-mindedly heal, and when the game starts going downhill, they blame the roles that, quote-unquote, can actually do something. But they fail to recognize that they're in a great position to do something to win the fights. Do you think the DPSs on your team are absolute idiots who are doing nothing? Well, then you have 2 choices. Either don't help them out and they continue to be terrible because they're playing at their actual skill level, or you can help them out and make them seem better than they really are. Another important role of support, which is more applicable in tournament play but can still be useful on the ladder, is the role of shot caller. Most tournament level teams make their Lucio player the shot caller because he has the least amount of mechanical things to worry about in game, and he's also positioned furthest back and therefore has the information to make calls. Shot calling, at the simplest level, is calling out what ults you want to use and your general plan for the upcoming fight. That's where you should start if you're new to shot calling. But if you want to become an even better support, you can dive deeper than that. I personally have been a shot calling support for my collegiate team, although I shot called as Ana, not Lucio. I kept track of enemy ults, our ults, and I told my team what ults they were likely to use, how they probably planned on using them, and what we were going to do to counter their plan. Now this takes a lot of game sense, and I definitely wasn't perfect at it when I started. I actually made some really bad calls when I first started, but as I learned from my mistakes, I realized the best ways to use my own team's ults, how quickly enemy ults charge so I could keep better track of them, and how to quickly convey that vital information to my team. This is a part of supporting that you should learn if you want to play to your full effectiveness. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more of me, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Trevorius01 or on Twitch at twitch.tv/Trevorius01. Alright, I will see you guys in my next video.